I'm Larry Roberts. They call me Pirate Larry. I ran across Ed Roth. I'm a builder, car builder. Been doing it 30-something years, and I actually met Ed in California in the 70s, and he inspired me to do what I do today. So this is the Outlaw. This was Ed's exaggerated version of the T-bucket, classic T-bucket. And as you see, Ed thought outside the box on everything he did. This was all hand-laid fiberglass. Ed used to do the frames of the vehicles, and then he would plaster. He would just throw plaster all over the place and then cover the plaster in fiberglass. And fiberglass at that time was really unconventional. Nobody knew anything about fiberglass, and Ed wasn't afraid to try anything. So he built all these crazy scoops and scallop looking fenders, and he exaggerated the back of the tail, and then he did this crazy wild paint job and striped her all up, and of course had a really hot mill in it. And it was a neat car, and it was unlike anybody else's T-buckets. T-buckets were already outrageous, and of course this is the Outlaw. And the reason that being, when Ed would go to car shows, other guys didn't want to show against Ed, so they made him an outlaw. So that via the reason why he called it the Outlaw is going to be called, I think, the Excalibur, and it ended up being the Outlaw, and you can see why. Everywhere he went, he won, including here at Detroit. Now we're here with arguably Ed's most famous creation, the Beatnik Bandit. It speaks for itself in a lot of ways, because this was all hand-laid fiberglass that Ed figured out, and he did the same process, the plaster over the frame, and then he started just throwing the plaster on and shaping it, and then he started glassing it, and just there's photos of Ed covered in fiberglass dust. He put this supercharged mill in it, but the thing that really set it apart was the bubble top here. He saw planes coming in from the 50s, like Sabre jets, what have you, that had bubble canopies. He saw that, so thought, wow. So he thought, how do you do that? So he found out that they used a clear plastic, a Lexan. So what he was very ingenious. He got a piece of it from somewhere. He made a wood buck and put this piece of plexiglass in the wood buck, and then went to a friend of his pizza oven late at night with compressed air and blew this bubble. And that's where we got the bubble top. So of course when Ed showed up with Ed was kind of a beatnik kind of guy, so he called it the Beatnik Bandit, and it was a hit everywhere, and kids lined up for blocks and blocks and blocks for months to see this car. Everywhere he toured in the country, there were lines of kids and spectators to see what Ed did, and every other car Ed did from then on, everybody couldn't wait to see what Ed would build, what kind of crazy concoction Ed would build. Also at that time, Ed wasn't much on being fancy, or he usually was barefoot or some sandals and overalls and kind of unkept. And when he started selling model kits, Revell thought, man, if you're going to see all these kids and have our kits, you need to look a little more presentable. So Ed, being the outlaw that he was, he went to a thrift shop in LA and bought a used tuxedo, an old tuxedo with a high hat, a top hat, and a monocle, and a cane. And he showed up to Revell and says, "How's this?" And they was like, he thought they'd be kind of like, wouldn't get the joke, and they thought, fabulous, what a great idea. So then he said, we need a name. They shot out a few names, and Ed says, well, I'll be Ed Big Daddy Roth. And that stuck, and they loved it. It was great for Revell, it was great for the kids, it was great for Ed. And so that's how you got Big Daddy Roth, the character that he became. And he was in every way even bigger than his cars. Ed was quite a character, and so was his cars.